Okay, guys, how we doing? Here we are. It's Friday the 2nd here, and of course, we're going to look at Bitcoin today. So I thought I would try and carry on with what I started last week, the idea of here trying to analyze and see if you can work this both with and without the Elliott count, and then as we look at the Elliott count, determine whether or not it's helping us with the decision-making process. So before we put an Elliott count on this, let's take a look here, kind of picking up where we left off. Now, I should mention here, this is the 4-hour on Binance to the dollar tether. So kind of picking up where we left off, I'm using the channel that I think is the two channels that are most influencing the market here. And just a quick review here. We went through why I was using those two pivots here. So we get a perfectly technical pivot here, and then we get it. Oh shit, it's over here. Hang on. We get this again. Here, so we get two perfect to the tick algo targets. So that's why I want to connect these two, and then I want to also look for as much confluence as I can. So connecting these, note here, I get 1, 2, 3, 4 tags of that trend line here. You think of it that way. So I come down here. I know I want to intersect this because that was technical. So I kind of put the two together, and I get just this perfect cross. So in addition to that, I have the structural support that held the market. So I know this is an important pivot to the market. So looking at what you might be looking at next, well, of course, you can't help but note how the center line of this channel is influencing the market here. So we've just run into that resistance. But additionally, now if let's dig in here a little more closely. So as we run into this structure here, well, of course, we want to see what the algos are doing. Well, I should point this out, right? So if we're just going from the absolute low, that got moved a little bit, from the absolute low to our high here, you can see the structure seems to have held it from getting to a 50. Now, nothing says that we aren't teed up to do something like this, come down, whether it's here, right? It would all make sense. You can just kind of look at that structure and see how, well, that would not be unreasonable for this to be an area where the market's going to come down and test. How strong is the support here? So interestingly, note how it's right between the 50 and the 618. So that, now if you were thinking about what the algos have done last here, so if I'm just going to use my pivot here to here, well, we can see, come here. That's what I want. Okay, so here's the tag of the 50. We come down here and we're rejected, right? We don't get to target. It was right on track to get there. So is it the structure that holds it again? It's a little throw over on this channel, but now we're back again testing again. So there's a couple things to consider here. Now here we will have broken the 65, so I don't want to use that again. And then if we're pulling from this pivot to here, it's too far, so I go back one, because this seems to be what's influencing the market. So are we going back up to test this? Or more likely, it would appear maybe we're on track to test that section here as we come up, test the golden zone. And much like we had the cross of two channels here, do the same type of thing. And then that would direct you down towards this location here. We'd be back down testing this structure here. You can see we get the little bump in the volume profile here. So that is an area that I would certainly be paying attention to if we're going to come up here and challenge that. And then, of course, we could either working off the challenge or potentially, right, if we get there, you have the potential for a golden corner to set up there. Now, this may be we're too far gone here, so you could start going to the shift, right, or the modified shift, which is going to be essentially, well, in this case, they're right on top of each other. So it's essentially like another channel. So since we're past the geometry of the original framing, we could either go here, that may still be a factor. Working from this, it looks like it's too far. So the channels seem to be doing the job here. So if we're going to come up here and test this area, this is definitely something I want to pay attention to. Not necessarily for the short, although those that like to short, that's an area to be paying attention to. But you might then think, oh, if I do get the reaction here, right? And we don't know. We could easily just put it in a double top here at the 50. But if we're going to come up and challenge that golden zone, then this will be the key tell here, right? So then you'd potentially have some algo influence. I'm just hypothetical here. I'd have some algo influence here as we'd come back down to the range between the 50 and the 618, which could in turn set that up. So you're kind of in a bit of a no man's land if you're working without an Elliott count here in terms of what the next trade would be. Can you just be a buyer here? Well, I mean, nothing says that based on what we see here that we can't just go up and rip towards those new highs. Right? But does that appear to be likely? Well, you'd want some confirmation. Well, let me rephrase that. I would want some confirmation here. So right now, I'm stuck between. Well, let's take this off. Right. So right now it's bear's ball. Right. So everything from below. Right. Even if I take the very last pivot here. Right. All the 65s are broken. So unfortunately, right now it's bear's ball, right? This is the last algo play we can see out here at this degree here on a 4 hour. Here's the 50, target is denied. So at the moment, you'd have to give the ball to the bears here, even though we're getting this nice little move here off of the test of this structure. I'm not ready to say, okay, time to get long here. Here we go. Right? A lot of resistance to fight through here. Of course, and if we get through that, right, always, right, we got to go back one. This is the big one we got to get through. Right? Then it's clear sailing. Until then, you got to be cautiously optimistic about the potential here. So as I see that here, if you're just trying to work with geometry and algo pulls, I don't think you have a strong case here for the buy side until you get some confirmation, meaning you're going to have to wait for this to get up here and break and then come back and give it a retest before you go again. So I'd be a bit cautious in here. Now, that's with just as, keeping it as simple as I possibly can. Maybe you could draw some bullishness in your bias here off of the fact that we don't break this low, that it's tested and it holds. Yeah, all right. So that may lean you a little bit more bullish, but I don't think we're ready to break out the bullhorn just yet. Right? Much as I want to pronounce that, I don't think it's there. So that said, right, so even looking at the oscillators here, well, you've had this decreasing volume and the selling volume dropped off here. Now we've had this pickup here on the buy side. It's a good sign. Now note here as we run into the center line of that channel here, we're up here in the, we're pretty pinned here. We're over 70 in the RSI. Now, not that it can't stay up there, obviously, right? We can do that, but the fact that we're pulling back a little bit, perhaps a retest of the 50, might be something you could cling to on the buy side, or just a straight retracement. Now we'll look at that in an Elliott context here in a minute, but in the interest of just trying to keep this simple, even if let's go down to an hourly here before I move off to an Elliott count, we can look at this and say, let's get this out of here. All right, well, I've got a little something here that's happening. I've got a series of, we look here, well, okay, I got a little series of higher highs and higher lows, so potentially I've got some sort of little trend that's in play here. Pull this off here so we can get a better look at that. So is that enough to run on? Well, you could just do standard ops here, swing low, swing high, if that's going to be our pivot here. So as I was kind of showing before, we come back down here into this range here, test the edge of this channel, even though we had the little throw over here. That might be an area of interest, right? If we get something that this pull here would have this target here. Second target would put you back up toward, remember that's going to be relative to the higher pivot. So to put that back together, if we go here, right, so swing low, right, here's the 50, down, it holds, and we're come back up here. I sure would want to see that break to give me more confidence in the buy side here. So there you go, but that potentially now you've got, if we're using even this as a target here, you don't get, that's not a monster move, but nice little swing trade you could go after, perhaps bring you back up here to retest that 50. So what'd you have there? From, let's call it 98.15 with a target of 11, we'll call it 11.15. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. But I would be cautious about, assuming, oh, I caught the turn here and then we're off to break the highs. Okay, now let's see if the Elliott is going to add any value here, because there's some complexity here to this count, right? And much as you want to, so when you first look at it, here's what your eye wants to do. Oh, 3, 3, 5. What's the problem? Well, you dig into it a little bit more. If you're strict about your Elliott rule set here, that may not be what's so obvious there. So let's just go look over here and see if that can help us with our decision-making process. I don't want to be in log scale. Okay, so let's back out here. Let's go to a 2 hour here and take a look at this. All right, so first, this is kind of picking up from a couple of weeks ago. Much as right, the dominant right swing here, you know, you want to see this. You want to see, oh, there's my 3, there's my 3, there's my 5. Well, so first, I think this is pardon me. I think this is an A wave through a 5 because of the 1, 2 here. If I open that up a little bit more. All right, so you can see that a little bit better. I think this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I get a diagonal here. So you got, you know, this is the shaky part of that. So you'd have to go A, B, C here to make the diagonal work. But it is, remember, in a diagonal, we're looking for the start of the 1 wave here, if I get it right on there, and the pivot of the, the start of the 1 through the pivot of the 3rd. We're looking for the retrace in the 4. Now 50 is ideal, so we get plenty of overlap here. But then we come down, you'd have to do it since it's diagonal. You got to go A, B, C, which, you know, it's stretching a little bit on the AB, but the C is certainly there. So what I think we get here, note right to the tick, guys. Right, not I promise you, not coincidence. Right, to the tick. Then we get the reaction. Okay, so if you know, it's affecting how you'd count it, right, based in terms of how far you'd go. If you were thinking flat, that's not far enough, right? So the fact that I can get a 5 here through the diagonal accommodates this. So I can go 5, 3, and then I think we come down here in a 5. I do think this is an impulse, but it takes a little bit of insight in here into what we have here. So this becomes the key section of this. This does not work without this section right here, all right? So what I think we get is we get an expanded flat. And I say that partly because I've got a clear 5 here. So the other factor here, if I pull this off, because when you first bring it up, right, just looking at it, you want to put the 1 here, thinking, oh, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. But right, so it's a tick. Right, it's very slight overlap, but it's enough. It's enough. It's enough. You know, here, if I get it right on there, right here, I should note here, I switched over to Polo. All right, just they don't get a lot of love lately. Here, I haven't used them for a while. All right, I still keep an account there. But anyway, coming up here, you see my point here. Here's the overlap. So if this is the 1, which is at first glance, that's where you immediately are thinking, oh, 1, 2. Well, if you really look in there, there's a clear 5 in there, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So conveniently, that solves the problem. Right, so if this is my 1 and I get an A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, what I have now is an expanded flat, B, C, right? And then that allows me to come down here and complete with this as my 2 via the expanded flat here with the B expanding past the 1. Right, so that, let's pull back out here. Okay. So that solves that problem for me now. So I don't have the overlap here. So I can go 1, A, B, C into the 2. Now I can come down for the 3, A, B, C in the 4, and then 1, 2, 3. Well, you got to dig the 4 out of here. And the 5 gets a little skinny, but just looking at it, if I go down to the smallest 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 there. Get these all down here. Okay, there we go. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that completes an ABC, which sets me up for a W wave. Now that is influencing the decision making here about what's to follow. All right, so here, let me take this off here to clean it up a little bit. So it appears to me per this count, that I've got an A, B, C. So I've got a zigzag here into the C wave that gives me a W. Right? So following the W, I'm looking for a corrective wave structure here for the X wave. Now the X has to be at least, let me take this off. I got to get at least 618 of the W, right, to stay rule compliant. So from the pivot here to my W low here, all right, here's where I know I can call it an X wave. Right there. But I got to get up there. So I'm putting the 5 here as we're coming off of this low. So W per the count here, I can get a clean 5 coming up. I can get an A, B, C coming down. Now I'm looking for my C wave here, and right now I don't know that if I've got the 1 wave or I'm going to go up here and finish. It looks like potentially now I could go up here and finish at the 618, and that points me down here just using the algo play for the W, A, B, C into the X. Now I got to come down here and finish with an A, B, C. So to be more precise about what that would look like, ultimately you'd be looking for something like that. Right, so this could come down a little further. Just eyeballing here as to what that might look like. So that's so that would put us back down here. Now let's put that in context. Okay, where is that putting us here? Right back into that big zone here, this area of prior structure. All right, so smack dab in the middle of it, then pulling out again. Say, well, where does that put me in the context of the larger, can I do it? I guess I got to go to a 4. All right, so where does that put me relative to the swing low, to the swing high? Well, that would have me, I'm not, here's the bigger move down here. So if I'm going to get an extension here, potentially all I'm doing is setting up here for a retest here at the 38. Note I've got this additional structure here that I can lean into, right? So if we're going deeper than that, it wouldn't scare me. I don't think it collapses the count if we're going to get a bigger move than this. It doesn't really change the count so much. Right? If we get a bigger ABC to come down here and get the Y at the 50, it wouldn't scare me away. All right, so from the buy here, right? That's what we're all waiting for. When's the next ideal time to be a buyer? Now this would be just textbook Elliott, right? Or you could just leave the Elliott out of it and go swing high, swing low. I know there's an algorithm that's going to be sitting there chomping at the bit, waiting to be a buyer there. So what is there a trade there right now? I guess what we're trying to figure out. Do we have a trade currently? Are we out of the woods here? Well, per what I'm just taking you through and per the Elliott application, I would say absolutely, definitely not out of the woods yet. Now, if we finish the weekend and we do something like that, well, obviously things change. But right now, it's just about what's the most likely path that we're going? Can we put together a roadmap that would make sense with that? Because right now, the ideal scenario would be come down here and retest the 50. Right, you can just kind of look over here as well, see that big volume node here. So you'd have support there. That's all, can I get it over here? Oh, shit, let's go 8 hour. It's all tied to all of this action here. Hover, 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 right? We got lots of market acceptance there. Can we come, there's the point of control if I just bring this over here. So here's where all that volume took from all of that right before the drop. Coming back down here would make sense, right? You could just kind of logically go, well, I can see how that could happen. Right now, everybody, we've got the Fed doing what they're doing, Trump doing what he's doing. Everybody's going, oh shit, man, what a perfect environment for Bitcoin. Right? Looks like, it's going to be easy, right? Buy Bitcoin here. Well, if you're a technician, it doesn't look like it's quite ripe, does it? Right? So if you're applying the Elliott count here, it doesn't look like it's ready yet. So let's come back here and see where the next trade is. So right now, per this Elliott application, I guess I got to get this all out of here. Get this out of here. I'm reluctant to say anything other than something is going in here. So I can get a 1, 2. Looks like perhaps I've got the 3 going here. Let's take this off here. All right, so maybe if this is the W, if my AB, now, of course, since I've got a lower high here, I'm going to want to put a set of median lines on that. So from the pivot here of the proposed A wave to my B, kind of sets up rather nicely here. So this is deep, but we get let's get you right on there. Good here. So I do get a corner pocket. What's the caveat? As long as this pivot holds, I got 80% probability of getting there. So it looks like I could well be into the 3rd, the 4 going in here. So if that's going to be, let's zoom in here a little bit. If that's going to play, then I'm watching for the pivot here because right now it would appear I've got an impulse underway. So I'm going to pull from that 2. If that's my 3, and right now it looks like maybe. Where am I looking for it here? So this would be potentially a nice spot to be anticipating some support here. So look what else we've got here. Just drawing these wicks. Well, really, you can use all 3 of these here. So I've got support becomes resistance, resistance, resistance. Now I get through it. So the idea that I'd come back down here and test it at the 38, certainly you can just, again, no Elliott aside, you could just look at that and go, well, I got a set of median lines to tighten you up. Coming down to this to challenge this lower parallel sure makes sense. I can completely understand that, Elliott or not. If I'm going to retrace here, I've got all of this to kind of tee me up here as the buying opportunity. So this would be the potential next short-term little swing trade would be right here. Now, if we tee up here, look where the 5 is going to be. All right, cautionary note here, because if we only get here, failure to make the median line, sign of weakness. So let's put that all back together, because remember, for this to be an X wave, we've got to get 618 of the W. Shit, I think I pulled the wrong pivot. Back up. All right, so we got to get 618 of the W. So I got to get this. No, I did it right. Okay, so there, look what we got to get to. Right there. Right before I can put the X here, we got to get 618 of the W. So if this is coming up here, first target's not going to do it. Second target, judgment call. We got to get back up here. So this is going to need some legs. So what's the alternate? Perhaps, right? Where perhaps there's an extension in the 5. Although I don't want to have to count on an extension in the 5. So if this is going to come down and we complete here at this level here, well, maybe certainly the X could go higher. So you see what I'm getting at here. This potentially now, let's push those off, could be just the one wave of something on a larger degree. Because this is my requirement, and I got to at least get here, which right now, per the count, would imply that I'm going to need an extension in the 5. So I wouldn't keep me away from this trade here, right? Knowing that, so if I get the turn here at the structure, all those things I just took you through. So let's call that what do we got? Let's just call it 10,000. First target is we're just rounding here. We'll call it, it's called 11,000. Right? So you got $1,000 swing here. Second target, now unless it happens fast, second target here is 11,540. You know, if you're going to get up here and push those third targets here, perhaps you're reconsidering the count here. Perhaps, although I don't see a lot of alternate ways we could count this. So you've got this wick here to work with as a 1. So from the 2, yeah, I can go 3, 4. Looks like the 3 is in, doesn't it? All right, so if we just look down here, any help from the oscillators? Not really divergence here. So it looks like that's your 3. So it implies that we've got the peak here. If this is going to come down here, this is potentially now our 3 wave. Coming down, yeah, that's very tradable. But I would not be overly aggressive here. I would be. There's 2 ways to look at this. So one, you could just buy it if you could put the entry here between the 38 and the 50, right? If it's going to go below that, do you want to give it that much room below the 618? Well, individual trader's choice if you want to give it that much room. You could come down here and test the golden zone, not overlap the 1, right? But remember, the deeper it goes, right? The deeper we go down here, you're kind of running into lower probability of getting to that target. So that it doesn't kill the trade, but the probability of going from 618 to third target, I would say it reduces, just probability wise, right? Doesn't mean it can't happen, but you'd rather see this hold up here at the 38. Now we look strong. It implies more strength, more shallow retracement. We come into this little pocket here that's just sitting here. We've got all of this potential support sitting there. Then you've got the median line, the lower parallel here. You got a lot of things teeing up for a good idea here to be looking to get long right in that spot, but I would not give that a whole lot of room. No need to. If it's going to go deeper, then I may want to rethink the whole thing. Right? Depending on how far that goes. How deep do we go? Are we going to challenge that 1? Right, so it's always just a calculated risk here. But for me, if I'm going to buy it, I want to see the pivot here. I don't want it going below the 50. Not to mention, if I just go swing low to swing high, this is about as far. I wouldn't want to get it too far on the other side of that. So remember, algo doesn't care about the Elliott count, right? It's just going to use the dominant set of swings. So here's my 50. Here's the 1 wave just before the golden zone. So you got to, choose your entry. What I would do if I were anxious to get long here, I'd start with a small amount here, maybe 25% here at the 38. You can see here also just looking over here, we get a little low volume node here relative to that, where that pivot line is, because we didn't have market has been rejecting that. So, but now I come back into market acceptance. So a whale likely would be more prone to be a buyer here, where they can bury that size, right? They get all of that to play with, even more here. But note, we get this little low volume node here right at the 50. So I wouldn't give it too much beyond that in terms of stop placement. That's just me personally, right? I wouldn't give that too much more. I'd rather take the small loser and reevaluate, see what happens down here at the all the way back at the 50. Right now, no reason to assume that the Elliott play isn't going to be consistent. Note we got the Vegas wave here as well. As we come up back to retest it, go up for the 1, I think we look pretty good. But if we do this, what have we just completed there? Remember, we got to get up here. Right, so that would really imply that there's going to be a bigger C. If that's just going to be the 1 wave, remember it's got to be a 5. So if that's just going to be the 1, right, just kind of thinking, oh, 3, 4, 5, right, that could be going much higher for that C wave. All right, so just thinking up here, that wouldn't. Oh, let's keep the Elliott or the median lines in play, something like that. Okay, now let's pull all the way out. Right? Could the X go that high? Sure. Sure. If we're going to go that high, interesting, right? So possibility here that we're going to go higher. That still actually wouldn't kill the X wave. You still very much come down here and get yourself an ABC. But then we're back to, if it does that, right, the probability of us going all the way to the 50 gets reduced because of that size. So it would be a function of how deep is the A, right? You kind of have to work with that as it's coming out. But you want to kind of go through that process of thinking that through. What if we do complete here and start to come down, could we be done? Could we put the X down here? No, we can't. It's got to get at least to the 618 to call it an X. So maybe, so our options are extension in the 5th, or if we pivot here, we got something bigger happening because we need 5 here. How are we doing? Oh, 26 minutes. Well, that's probably more detail than you needed. Okay, but there you go. All right, so that gives you a couple of things to think about, a few alternates, the qualifier from the Elliott perspective, and then if you're just going, oh, fuck the Elliott, right? You can come over here and look at this and say, okay, well, I got some big resistance. Oh, that's got Elliott on it. Well, you get my point here. We got a couple of different ways we can look at it. We can work with it. Here's the one I was looking for. All right. Next thing I see, look at this confluence here. Right. Oops. Where we've got, come here. Ah, fuck, I can't get it. Right there. Gets my attention. What happens right there? Right. We're going to blow through, go up to the 618, right in line with that channel, or is just this algo target going to do it before we start coming down again after that target? All right, guys, there's plenty to chew on. Okay, back to you.